Hello everyone, welcome to Friday stream here at Strange Loop Games. I am acting as lead game designer for this company here, and most of you have probably seen me before. Jens, as per the portrait, this name tag. And today we'll be going over some of our exciting changes that we've done to 10, as well as kind of a QA over some bug reporting, some kind of the process of when we take feedback, what happens to that feedback, where are those bug reports going, and kind of how those are assigned and dealt with, as well as kind of show you some kind of gradual charts over how it's currently looking in terms of where the bugs are kind of coming from and where and what systems they're mainly impacting. But also probably some general chatter about some balance changes that's been happening, as well as the feedback in that area, and kind of how we're acting on it and what we're doing, and some of the small tweaks and changes that we're doing during the playtest here. And also kind of thank everyone for participating in it and kind of really giving it their best to kind of break things and making it as smooth of a release once we get to that stage as well. So I think we'll just switch over to some flight footage over Tiger right now, and what my graphics set is after switching around, but we working on some of those distance settings for renditions, and cranked up the view distance. It's still kind of loading and processing in the detailed terrain. So I'm hoping that chat is going to be somewhat proactive today, and I'll try to answer as much as I can during our stream here. So we've released our White Tiger playtest. As a lot of people have seen, there's been a lot of people participating in it, and things are just going nuts on it. It's looking really impressive so far, and we've got a lot of valuable data, as well as a lot of really high critical bugs getting out of the way, and also some are still remaining, and there's a lot of bugs still to be found as well, specifically in terms of interactability and settlements, as the settlement system is quite complex and has grown quite a large volume since this update, with all these new layers and new systems kind of working in together with themselves. We've also seen a lot of areas where we've had a good idea over how we want to represent data to the players in certain UIs, like settlement layers and kind of interactability, and getting that the information flow from the different tooltips. And as we see players use it in terms of actual live scenarios, we're seeing that this is not being used in some areas the way we would like it to be, and a lot of those points are things that we're also looking at and kind of acting on, and making sure that we're improving these information flows and information sources to be actually usable to the player in different types of scenarios. Be it, you know, finding different stores, or finding details about a settlement that you want to live in, or whichever kind of mix and variations of these areas that you're looking for information but can't really find it. Hit us up if there's something that you feel that, hey, this is something I really needed to know before I joined this settlement. Why was this not a thing? Don't hesitate to either ping me or DM me on Discord, or just drop a feedback in one of the Discord channels for the playtest. Either be concept feedback or just in general. We'd love to know about it. Yeah, so what have we been doing other than seeing things explode? Well, we're trying to fix it as much as possible, preferably all of it, but it is a work in progress, and it is getting there. So anything that you feel are exploding, as always with the bugs that are cropping up in the playtests, please, and this is something that kind of hard to give a note to players without sounding too kind of trying to search for a good English word for it, but like the stuff that seems to be apparent in terms of breakage, but might have slipped under the radar because everyone kind of assumes that this has already been reported. Getting those small quirks in there just as a note somewhere is also amazing, because sometimes the most obvious thing is something that everyone just kind of looks over and just glances past. Everyone just assumes someone else has reported it, so it never gets reported. This has been a few cases where we've had unique cases of crashes. So yeah, just hit us up and we'll try to get as many of these bugs out of the way as possible. And I see we've got the new texture block for the stone road, I believe it is, merged in. Yeah, that one, as a couple of people probably noticed that it was using the temporary asphalt concrete as a placeholder texture, while our art was fixing up some nice new textures for the stockpiled materials of it. And yeah, and with the changes that I've done to the plant scarcity and the world generation population stuff with together with Grigori, the tiger guys have really stepped up the game and planted like crazy and really using the biomes to the fullest extent to repopulate and bump the produce scale to be able to fill the needs of the population in terms of both food and general resources for crafting. This is looking pretty sweet. This is some pumpkin fields, some cotton. We saw some really big cotton fields over here. We got some beans going. We've got some rice. Really looking good. So we'll give it a whirl here, just to kind of look over this for a little bit, as I'm gonna I haven't really roamed around Tiger at all, other than just checking out the different UIs and kind of seeing what things are being interacted with and what the prices are at, and kind of gauging around some of the balance factors. I haven't actually roamed the world in that sense. So I'm kind of being impressed as everyone else is kind of looking at this the first way. We've still got some improvements to deal with in terms of chunk loading. But yeah, had something on my tongue, but I kind of slipped. Hello, watermelon. Are there any servers up that have recently wiped? I would recommend you to get connected on our Discord and check the server ads channel, where any server admins can kind of post an ad for their servers when they are wiped and what their concepts are, and everything kind of detailing around that. And as Teal says, you can sort by server age in the server browser as well to kind of fit something that is in your comfort zone in terms of what you're looking for. So, a lot of people have seen White Tiger kind of been mentioned and cropping up in different discussions, and often being compared to a lot of other servers in one way or another. What is White Tiger? Well, it is originally a normal server that kind of cropped up by Dennis when as a non-affiliated server, and he built up a very intricate concept around it where you have a predetermined government with its assortment of roles and adjacent responsibilities in terms of garbage management, laws surrounding things like minimum wage or a universal basic impact, a UBI, basic income law, basically giving you a certain amount of money depending on your situation in terms of wealth and so on and so forth. And it has a lot of intricate tax relations and different layerings. And with 10, this kind of scaled up to a new level where you have a global federation, which is something that in a straight out normal vanilla, as we reference like default gameplay as, this would be something that is the kind of end game reaching of government level, where you have towns as the starting part. Go over some of the UI here while we're doing this. So you start off with towns being formed here. We can see some radiant. There we go. Some influence levels here where they've grown their influence base because of their additional cultural property. And that's kind of where you start off with. You got these mini governments that form and kind of cover these areas, which then grows into on what White Tiger referred to as states. And these are then comprised of the different towns, and they expand appropriately depending on well, and cultural limitations and the borders is something that we're looking into. There is some miscalculations going on here, as you can tell that this state here is kind of small compared to Unica, which is exploded in terms of its volume. And we're looking into some of those calculations and values to see where we want these levels to be at, and kind of how that translates into from a cultural object being placed on a property to how is it affecting you and why is it affecting it the way it's doing it. So that's some of the things that we're currently looking at specifically for culture changes. And then, as you can see, the Global Federation is covering the entire map, and this is something that White Tiger has uniquely done by setting changes to make sure that we have a federation that can globally apply laws from the get-go, rather than with 10 allowing players to kind of have that Wild West territory as long as it doesn't have a governmental influence covering that area. And that has been its own journey to kind of deal with our own advancements in civic systems, to be able to wrap in and kind of have these unique concepts for servers still be quite viable. And because of the insane level of intricacy in between how these systems operate and kind of talk to each other, White Tiger has also been one of our primary source of playtest, like properly playtesting and making sure that the civic system works properly. As a lot of servers generally don't use the full scope of the civic system. And that is something that, you know, each server is entirely capable of doing something this intricate. But it's also reliant on that you have a core kind of foundation of a lot of GMs that are micromanaging and kind of dealing with any weird objects that are cropping up that could be potentially causing explosions, in terms of be it a law that was miscalculated or misaligned, and they have to do kind of command edits of these laws so that they're working the way that they're intended to work. And that's something that we have, thankfully we have an amazingly dedicated and super helpful and friendly volunteer staff to be able to pull this off. Because without them, I don't think we'd see White Tiger in the scope that we are today. So they definitely deserve a lot of praise and a lot of appreciation for what they're doing. But for the bugs, well, we're squashing them as they're coming out. Like, it's a good general summary I have on that. It's difficult to give a gauge on when and where. I see Europe Gaming TV. What's the expecting release date for the update? When it is as stable as we'd like it to be. I think it's a good summary of it. It's hard to give a gauge. We've got a lot of bugs that are coming out of Tiger, both as actual game impact implications or just things that are not behaving the way the player is expecting things to be behaving. So some behavior modifying interactions or information flows that we kind of want to tweak and make sure that this is working in a good manner. What else do we have here? Has the issue been fixed for spawning as other people? I believe it's mostly fixed, but Dennis is probably around here somewhere that has more track on the explicit details of that one. Hopefully he's around. Dennis, are you around here? Maybe. He'll probably answer in chat here if we're asking him nicely. Yeah, I got confirmation that it should be fixed now. So if anyone manages to experience that somewhere, then let us know, because we believe we fixed all sources for it. Yeah, I think that's probably covers that one. Will update 10 be the last major update? We still have a lot of things that we want to be adding for it that is probably going to be coming as major updates, like things like animal husbandry and large scale changing like that. And that's probably where to kind of clarify where we're looking at in terms of how we version things. We've got kind of hot fixes, minor releases, and then major releases. And major releases is generally something that we use when we expect people to need to restart worlds in general to be completely to be completely inheriting all the properties that we've changed. So things like world generation changes or biome changes where we've changed out different types of ores or layerings of materials. And that's kind of our main use of major versions, where we're introducing really big feature changes that might be necessary for complete new worlds to be able to fully experience these changes. If I can out. Switching out some here. That one. There we go. So one of the big balance changes that I wanted to kind of just roam over a little bit. Still a few things that I want to keep track on when it comes to power. I've done some changes to the early, mid, and kind of late game power usage that have spooked a lot of players. And I've seen some panicking reflections on that. Oh my god, this is using so much more power now. Just to kind of touch over those quickly. So this is kind of the chart of what the new power systems are looking like at the moment. I've done some minor tweaks to the solar and the wind. I think I increased a little bit. So the basic mechanical generation would be your usual water wheel and windmill, and these are reflective. They are kind of the same compared to before. It's just that the values have changed. So when it comes to early game, where you're looking at the Arastra and the water pumps and kind of that, you are looking at a somewhat similar value-wise. I got a little bit bright because of the white background here, but bear with me. So these are kind of static as is. The really big change that you've got is the mid-tier, or the mechanical introduction, where you have the mechanical the mechanical engineering and the basic engineering kind of dealing in a higher grade of power generation and power requirements. And the stamp mills and the screening machines and kind of everything that goes around there have always had the issue of that they're not generating any pollution, as someone caught on, and I mentioned this in one of the streams before. Mining in general never generated pollution in itself. The filtration for the concentrates generated and are still generating tailing blocks, and these do cause pollution, but they're not causing aerial pollution. So one of the things that I wanted to get into 10 was a change in power dynamics to kind of reflect this, and have anything that you kind of do during the mid-tier area is starting to generate pollution from the get-go. That way you don't have this entire section of no pollution from the start up until basically oil and heavy industry production, and then you get slammed. Depending on your world size and your population, you can get really quickly overwhelmed by the massive pollution sources from people placing down cement kilns and blast furnaces all over the place, because suddenly they have all of these resources, and then it goes really quickly to get an excavator or a skid steer up, and suddenly you have all of this influx of material. And on the mining sourcing, and a question for if we're expecting to also bring in mid-tier stuff like mining machines instead of going from hand mining to skid steer mining. Yeah, we've got some plans, but not for 10 in that area. But yeah, so I'm hoping to see some of those changes afflict kind of mitigating this a little bit, so people get more accustomed to experience pollution from an earlier stage. And I'm really looking forward to seeing how that pans out, both in the playtest here, that they're starting to go through some of that. But also once this goes into release as well, to kind of follow up and see how people are experiencing it and how much it's impacting, because that is something that I would like to get a lot of feedback from. When it comes to general server usage, from any type of mixture in population, because it is really difficult to kind of scale this appropriately from a balance perspective, in terms of, like, if you're running a world on half a kilometer and you're playing with 10 people, it's gonna be a vastly different experience from someone playing on a kilometer world with 200 players. Even though you got twice the world size, you've got 5 times the population, which means that you're going to be a lot more impacted by the larger scale of resource acquisition and processing. And I think that's probably what I had kind of balance for the power stuff. So the basic mechanical engineering is going to be your wind and water, and then you go moving over to advanced mechanical engineering, which is the steam engine that has been revolving. And that is your introduction to a fuel source burn mechanical power, which is something that's fairly new. that device used to produce electrical energy, so I'm hoping not too many people are going to be super confused by that change. We've got the electrical generator, or the combustion generator, which is what it's called in game, which is your early introduction to electricity, and then you've got the really big behemoth of an industrial generator. I'm looking forward to people seeing that. So, back on the bugs topic. So some of the statistics that we're looking for when it comes to these bugs being reported, they're being kind of categorized, they're being assigned, and this is all reflected through our production can kind of gauge and see how these are progressing and how these are going based on the work people are putting in and getting these things kind of hammered out. So these are some examples of bugs that are assigned to the squads that is containing these amazing developers. And just to kind of give an overview a little bit over some of these bugs that have been posted in the last couple of days for a portion of the devs. And these are kind of metrics that we look into and kind of show off and to be able to track and just in general and in kind of what areas are being problematic. And as you can see here, we've got a pretty low impact area in some of these locations where we have a higher impact in the settlement and the interaction manager that has been completely reworked and kind of ripped out and improved. And civics is a more generic type issue rather than just specifically to the settlements. This can be specific to like certain law configurations and so on and so forth. And then of course the tools as well as an after effect of the interaction. So things are being worked on and things are being assigned, and like I said, any bug reports is amazing because it helps us track more things and it helps us get rid of them and squash them, and hopefully leading up to a better release for everyone. And give you a quick think through here. So this list here is kind of stuff that is pouring in from the playtest. So this is things that, and this is kind of showing off a little bit on how it's looking for our management side in terms of how things are being assigned, when they're being assigned, and kind of who's working on it and which squad, and kind of the intricacies of some of the backside of this. So mostly management stuff, which is not super exciting for a lot of people, but might be interesting to some people that are just interested in seeing how these things are working from from the gaming industry side of things. And see that, you know, we are taking this feedback seriously, we are working on it, and people are really hammering at it, especially the hammer bugs, unintended. And it's been putting in a lot of energy to get stuff out and solved. Instead of saying a release date, would you be willing to say what percentage you are from the beginning of a White Tiger playtest to where it's stable enough for release? I think it's difficult to give kind of a metric gauge of that because there are a lot of layers and a lot of different things to keep in mind, where these are kind of being constantly improved on and constantly being kind of fed back into the system and checked out, and making sure that they are being fixed and the fix worked the way we want it to be worked. But Yeah, it's a bit of a whack-a-mole when it comes to bugs. Because sometimes you're looking at a bug and what you think may be the problem is actually just a symptom of an issue. And then you end up just fixing the symptom and not the actual core underlying issue. Which then it crops up and manifests in a different way. So it does feel like it. And sometimes it can feel quite hopeless when you're really struggling with figuring out what is causing a specific issue. Like we had a like a name configuration that just caused massive explosions and the server died. Or we've had, let's see, find here. We've had a lot of things that have cropped up that we haven't really been able to test properly for is really the stress testing of the server. So to kind of optimize certain functionalities, things are being added as a multi-threaded environment where an action is calculated in a way by the CPU, and it's then being shared over different threads so it can calculate the different pieces in sequence or in parallel rather than in sequence. So instead of just having to wait for an instruction and then process that and read that, and then it waits for another instruction, it tries to calculate more things at once. And this works a lot of... This can be fantastic, but it can also be an absolute nightmare because some of these bugs are really, really hard to nail down why they're happening in the way that they're happening. Stress testing the server has really, really, really helped finding some of these issues where we just haven't had the simulated production line for really testing some of these scenarios that have cropped up. So it's just been absolutely fantastic to be able to use White Tiger to kind of nail all of these different rare case scenarios. Are you targeting a version 10 release in 2023 or will it be a 2024 thing? I will keep kind of parroting that in once it's stable enough, we'll announce it and push for release when it's ready. And as of right now, it's hard to set a date on it. It really depends on how much we're finding in terms of these bugs and how much we get done in an orderly fashion, making sure that the whole thing kind of works and is rigidly stable, because we don't want to rush a release and then have it, you know, everyone has to roll back every other week just because something kind of quirked out and it's unrecoverable. So we'd rather take a bit of extra time to really make sure that these bugs get properly fixed, and not just, you know, getting a band-aid and then it explodes at a later date when we try to fix something else. What about the memory leak? Every time you hit mechanics with steam trucks, the memory leak's killing the sound. Not entirely sure I understand what that one is about. That in regards to you hitting the truck with an interaction, or is that due to you driving the steam truck? Or probably easier to just give me a DM on Discord or ping me and probably take a look at it. I know that I've seen when you hit mechanics and steam trucks are coming out. Yeah, like I said, hit me up on Discord and we can take a look at it, because I'd be interested in getting like a memory dump and a snapshot and be able to pass it on to Grigori and some of the tech guys to kind of profile and go through what is being used and how it's what is being accessed by the game to cause that, and kind of where that memory is allocated in terms of the game cycle. Do wild animals have age, so they die of old age, etc. They don't really have an age cycle, I believe, at the moment. They animals are something that we will be looking at, reworking quite significantly once we get to a point where animal husbandry is starting to be properly scheduled out and looked at. Ooh, here we got some sunflowers. As you can see, there's a whole bunch load of farm fields kind of all over the place where they're tucked away and where they have properties. Here we got some pumpkins and some rice. As you saw there, we had rice earlier in the wetlands, and here we have some in the grassland as well. I played Eco somewhere in 2018. The game was in a very early access for me as an offline player. It was playable. Game pushed heavily into trading and online trading. Bothered me a lot. If you're thinking in regards to kind of tech progression, I would recommend, if you're looking at playing this as kind of a single player, just casual experience, I would recommend doing just playing it in using no collaboration difficulty settings, just to make sure that the skill rates are changed and kind of the ingredient costs are reduced a bit, and that for me works fine. Playing on my own or in a duo setup, which I do, at least. I really enjoy the multiplayer aspect of it, but I also play it single player myself as kind of a casual thing to kind of just tinker around with or build a bit, or trying things out that I like to do. And yeah, Armored Stone, that is a very good note. When you are reporting bugs or reporting issues with technical issues that you run into, I should specify, where you run into things like it's crashing, or you know, my tools disappeared, what the heck, what happened? Make sure to grab your player logs, and if you're testing this out in a local setting where you're running the server yourself, also include server logs, because it really helps finding these things, and make sure that you're posting the entirety of the log, just not snippets of the bugs or the errors, like specific errors, because some errors might be something that we are expecting to see in the log versus something that may not look like an error, and or it may not be apparent to be the cause of the issue. Yeah, so there is some detailing of where this player log is found, but it is in the Strange Loop Games folder inside app data, depending on your OS. Windows 11 has some new funky things in it that is causing issues. So yeah, believe it's pinned in the... If you join up on Discord, which is preferable choice of feedback when it comes to some of these things, because it's easier for us to track it, and you go into channel, it's in technical help, you've got all the information regarding what operating systems is supported, FAQs for where to find logs, where to find user logs, player logs, and server logs, as well as minimum requirements and so on and so forth, is pinned in the messages. And it is, like I said, I can't iterate it enough. It is essential to get bugs reported for us to fix it, because some bugs we might not experience ourselves. A common one that has cropped up for some of the interactions that we've seen in terms of our technical difficulties in reproducing some of these things is bugs where we have a different behavior cropping up inside Unity game engine editor versus what is experienced in a built game client. So we could have something that works completely 100% fine and as expected in the editor, but then it's completely broken when it comes to a built client. And some of those things can get really tricky to replicate on our end because some may be very hardware related. So having the ability to kind of draw on you guys participating in these playtests also helps us cover a lot of the variations of hardwares that may be conflicting or causing problems, be it due to the specific Unity version or some other technical dependencies like Revice and the audio systems, or Vox for the voice functionalities. It's just super important for us to be able to kind of properly move forward and fixing some of these more unique cases of issues. Do you know if the playtest is due to end before release? We've noticed servers are dying because people left us to go to the playtest. Is it worth us making a new season soon? I think that one depends on your cycle scale, but there is most likely going to be another playtest cycle after the current one in some way, manner, shape, or form. And this will go on as the usual White Tiger cycle, so they're approximate to 30 days. It is day 8 now, so it's got at least another 20-22 days for this specific playtest. Asmith, hello, and that is amazing to see you've been playing since basically the early stage of Kickstarter. It's been a long ride, but it's been quite a lot of fun, and we are gonna keep trying to do the best we can and getting some more awesome functions and some more awesome updates in the future to come up. Alpenglow. That was a long one, and quite a few ones as well. Approximately how long will this game be in early access, and we'll follow up on that. I think that one is probably better if you post in a DM to Dennis, because he'll probably have better answers for those than I have. Don't really have a lot of things I can say about that. What were your plans about adding boats? I mean, myself, I won't really use them, or are the seeds gonna change a lot? The world gen is probably gonna be staying somewhat similar to what it is right now. So, on the topic of boats and the restrictions, we did add some changes to things like calories spent when swimming, and it's been a bit of a sort of a difficult and kind of hard choices that we've done in terms of some of the restrictiveness to it. It is a server setting that you can flip on and off depending on... There we have a Pikachu in the background here as well. Yeah, and Calder comes in as well. I thought I wouldn't use boats that much either, but they've turned out to be a great way to transport materials. Yeah, and I think that's... It's not so much as trying to punish players for not using them to kind of make them use them, which is sort of been a big debate in terms of like, how are we gonna get boats to be usable? How are they gonna be? Why should we use boats when we can just build bridges everywhere? Well, I mean, if you're using a boat, you already have this amazing huge bridge between land masses. And that's part of the idea as well. There is some server toggles for changing some of these things out. Like we've got some, like people are building like natural canals to kind of punch in and be able to access materials and shops. And kind of like, look at this. We've got a boat shop here. So this is essentially, you can roll out with a canoe here, and the water thing is, let's pretend that we don't see that one. Water physics is still a little bit of a thing that we're looking at improving as well. But as you can see, people are coming up with creative ways to kind of cater the naval navigation. Where were yeah, calories when swimming. Calories are multiplied when you're swimming, and if you run out of calories, you cannot drown and get moved to the nearest land mass. Let's avoid that one as well. Didn't see that crab. So calories are spent when swimming in two different amplified ways. So if we're going into layers, did that one disappear on me now? Yeah, of course it did. So you've got the ocean biome, and you have deep ocean biome. And if we dive down into the deep here, you can tell the visual difference between a ocean biome, which is kind of the shoreline, and the adjacent value here going up to the edge of the area here. And then you're starting to come out into the deep ocean biome, where you have this kind of Mariana Trench feel to it, where it's just a deep void. And when you're swimming here, you've got a multiplier for calorie consumption that has been increased for the ocean biome, and that's one of the big feedbacks that we've gotten when it comes to some of the balance changes that I've done. We had an initial value for calorie consumption that was just eating through people, and they couldn't get where they wanted, and they were very unhappy with how restrictive it was. So I reduced the calories spent quite significantly for the ocean biome to allow people to be harvesting and kind of collecting the crops and things of the ocean. But you still have a pretty hefty cost for crossing larger bodies of water with deep ocean. Question: do any players use drowning to get to the other side? Do any players use drowning to get to the other side of the ocean without swimming the whole distance? When you're sitting still, you're not using calories. So if you're just kind of backpedaling and just stationary in the water, it's you're not going to be affected. So if you have a case where you really don't want to be ported somewhere, or you fell off your canoe and it just went over in the distance, you can just sit still and ask if someone can kind of help you out there. Let's see. As for, oh, okay, Alpa. Now I get you. So if they're force using the mechanic to kind of hop over, I mean, it's entirely possible. I believe we had some ideas in regards to things like you get moved back to the originating point of before you jumped into the water. But the it's something that we'll probably look at feedback for once it goes more publicly live and the stable branch comes out and more people are experiencing it, to kind of see what we want to do with it, if we want to change it. But it's probably under, you know, it's an exploit per se, but it's also one of those things where we probably won't mind it as much because you're still going to be emptying out your calories, and you would need to calculate exactly how much calories are being drained out, or you're going to be wasting a bunch of food rather than just swimming it. Have you considered special gears for people who want to go shark hunting and whatnot, and thinking about scuba gears? Yeah, we've thought about it, and we'll probably look at adding some outfits to kind of help mitigate some of the penalties for it. To be able to kind of navigate and you know, reduce that deep ocean to be able to do deep ocean diving and so on and so forth, because we are also looking at kind of what resources we want to have available in the deep ocean biome, as well as adding more things in the regular ocean biome, like corals and generally just more things to kind of populate the water areas, give them more color and give them more variations. We're also looking at a new type of structure for the kelps and a lot of other kind of visual polish to it. How about making swimming in deep ocean take more calories the longer you're swimming exponent? You can travel short distances, but as soon as you travel larger distances, you need to both. I think it's a good idea, but it's also kind of difficult to represent as well, because you would need to kind of incorporate this in a nice clean way of like a UI pop-up or something that would tell you how long you're doing it. And I'm not a particular big fan of things like you know, like a big UI bar that comes up and kind of calculates down as you're swimming more, or like a sprint exhaustion, basically like a stamina bar that gets depleted the further out you are. But it's been things that have been discussed and kind of bounced around in terms of ideas, looking at it and seeing how we want to approach it to make it really valuable. But we at the same time, we also want to make sure that some of these options are server configurable so people can customize them. And some of the options for that, like hard coding, the adding in the UI elements and kind of adding that stamina restriction, would be a lot of client-side stuff, and that is really difficult to make moddable at the moment. I'm hoping that a lot of people are happy and content with some of the changes for these things. For people that are interested in it, let me open up. Yeah, so in the new system and the new restrictions that you have for server administrators, you have this swim speed, which is a multiplier reduction, so you can affect and change out the swim speed penalty for swimming in the ocean, as well as the deep ocean, and then the different types of calorie consumption rates, and as well as these two booleans that will allow you to toggle on and off if you want to allow people to be capable of building, or if you want to restrict building completely, as well as if you want players to be able to drown or not. So you can still have the calorie consumption multiplier, and you can add, you know, people swimming really slowly, but you could disable the teleportation completely if you wanted to. So admins, I'm hoping, can customize this to make sure that they're kind of getting the restrictiveness options that they would like for their specific servers, but still allow the flexibility of players being able to still be as creative as they want them to be allowed to. Did I have... Oh no. Did I have anything else on the agenda that... some of the other balance feedbacks we've gotten was some of the crafting costs for some of the new intermediary items. This is quite clever use of block materials, I have to say. Whoever built this, very nicely done. Always like a good pixel art to show up in some of the shapes here. So here we have the really dense rainforest cropping up and some of the changes that are being handled by the players. They figured out that all of these sabas needed to go, so they transformed the forest into a non-existing forest. Kind of relevant questions to that area. Are trains and rail carts on your radar for the future? It is a question that keeps propping up, and I am probably leaning towards a non-answer for that one, because we have a lot of other things that is taking our priority in terms of both system upgrades and also some of the functionalities that we are looking at adding prior to that, and it is probably something that we'll get answers for in the future sometime. Question is... scuba suits, more resources specific to deep water. Yeah, I think I already answered that one bit. Yeah, we'll probably see some new stuff that's coming out for additions for the water biomes in the future. It's something that I want to see us get some cool coloration and just more things in here. We've got the sea urchin that is giving it some color, but for me personally, it still looks a little bit bland, and I'd like some more variations just aesthetically for it. We've got some ideas to what we want to populate in it and how we want to do it, and give it a more natural feel, adding more ambience to it. We got some planted Joshua trees to keep adding more to desert environment. We've got some planted cacti here as well, I believe. Look at that. I wonder. Bit of a mining area here. Randomly spawning treasure chests. No, I mean we do have one Easter egg when it comes to that. Boy. Loaded in one of the bigger hotels, I believe. Welcome to the housing area, I guess. That is some significant effort getting some of that stuff built here. Maybe more fish, but small uninteractable ones like the bugs you see on. Yeah, like we've got, I think we've got a few ideas, and I know the art team has some things up their sleeve when it comes to that that'll really blow everyone's mind. We'll get back on that in a future stream with a later update. The swim speed was reduced and kind of tweaked due to the playtest feedback. We've got some inconsistencies with tool durabilities that I'll be going over and changing out in upcoming day here on Monday or Tuesday. there has been some feedback about the influence in culture being very unpredictable to calculate, as well as kind of how to gauge the influence of effect and those areas. And that's also something that I kind of want to break down a bit and look over how that's detailed, as well as expand some of the information on for that to mitigate the information flow. But yeah, I think that's it for this Friday, unless someone has any other questions. I think I answered most of it. Yeah, no, I think that's probably it for today. We've moved. I think it's probably some of the people have noticed we have moved to a more bi-weekly schedule for the streams. It just made my schedule a lot more sane. Trying to make sure that these streams are on time every week. So we're probably gonna keep the bi-weekly schedule, and looking forward to going over some of the stuff that we'll be talking about. But we're on that. It's probably going to be posted on Discord, as well as look for stream announcement that is coming up. So for this week, from everyone at Strange Loop, I can confidently say that it's been busy. It'll keep being busy. Keep hammering out these bugs, and we are really grateful for everyone that is participating in the playtest, and gonna keep trying to do our utmost to make it as painless as possible to get these things out of the way, get in state. Yeah, hope to see you next stream, and have a good weekend. Bye everyone.